U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Israel to push for a ceasefire deal in Gaza after talks resumed in Doha last week. In a meeting with Israeli President Isaac Herzog, Blinken said the negotiations are a decisive moment in the war and may be the last opportunity to get Israeli hostages home. But Hamas, which carried out the October 7th terror attacks, has said any signs of progress are an illusion. The group says Israel has added new demands in the latest talks and has refused to consider withdrawing all of its troops from Gaza, which is a red line for Hamas. Let's hear some of what Blinken had to say at that meeting with the Israeli president.
This is a decisive moment, probably the best, maybe the last opportunity to get the hostages home, to get a ceasefire, and to put everyone on a better path to enduring peace and security. I'm here as part of an intensive diplomatic effort on President Biden's instructions to try to get this agreement to the line and ultimately over the line. It is time for it to get done. It's also time to make sure that no one takes any steps that could derail this process.
And while Israeli negotiators have expressed cautious optimism about reaching a ceasefire deal, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu accuses Hamas of dragging its feet.
Hamas remains obstinate. It hasn't even sent a representative to the talks in Doha. Therefore, the pressure should be directed at Hamas and its leader Sinwar, not at the Israeli government.
For more on this, I'm joined now by DW's Tania Krämer in Jerusalem. Tania, what are the main sticking points in the negotiations at this point?
Well, I can tell you what we know, what's being discussed publicly. Of course, there are a lot of things going on behind the scenes that we don't know. But it seems that the list is still quite long, and that despite this bridging proposal that was put on the table by the mediators at the talks in Doha last week. That is in itself based on the framework that was presented by US President Joe Biden back in May. Now, Hamas released a statement on Sunday night. They said they met with the mediators and they are basically detailing some of the sticking points according to their understanding. They're saying there's the issue of a permanent ceasefire that they want to see and the withdrawal of all the troops from Gaza. Now, we heard from Israel so far that they are only committing to a pause in fighting. Now, there's also the issue of the so-called Netzarim corridor. This is the newly created area between the north and the south of the Gaza Strip, where Israel has put checkpoints now. Hamas says it wants free movement for the people to go back home in the north, from the south to the north. Israel has said they don't want to see any armed people going north, so they need to control this area. There's also the issue of the Philadelphia corridor. This is the area between the border area between Gaza and Egypt, and that also pertains to the opening of the Rafah crossing, one of the main crossings that has been closed now for many, many weeks. There, Israel says it needs to control this area, has some sort of control, because this is the main supply route for Hamas and underground tunnels. And of course, Hamas rejects that. But there are also still issues, it seems, about the number of hostages and also the choice of the Palestinian prisoners that would be exchanged for the hostages that are still remaining in Gaza.
So quite a few sticking points. Given those concerns, how likely is it, Tania, that there will be an agreement?
Well, that's a good question, basically. First of all, we're not sure really where those talks stand. But, we heard the mediators after the talks in Doha, they struck some kind of cautiously optimistic tone. But this is not matched at all what we are hearing now from Israeli officials, but also from Hamas officials. And it doesn't seem that a breakthrough that's also really pushed by the United States. And that's also why we are seeing Secretary of State Antony Blinken here now in the region, that it seems really near. So Also here in Israel, Netanyahu has been accused, also in the security establishment, that he's not pushing hard enough for a deal. Netanyahu, of course, has rejected this. He says, his strategy of military pressure is working, and we are seeing this also translated in Gaza, where heavy bombardment has been going on, more displacement of people, more and more people have been asked again to evacuate areas which have been where the Israeli military has operated before. And don't forget, this all comes on the backdrop, of course, of the regional tensions here with Iran and Hezbollah. They have been signaling that they're holding off some sort of their retaliatory strike, seeing where those ceasefire talks are leading to. But at the moment, this is not sure at all what will be the result of that.
Tania, thank you very much for filling us in there. That was our correspondent in Jerusalem, Tania Krämer.